So before I turn the mic over to Tom Luster, I want to introduce him because Tom does not come before the Coastal Commission very often. He's behind the scenes working very hard on some of the more challenging projects we review in the Energy and Ocean Resources Program, including all Desal projects proposals. He is the Commission's staff expert on desalination, and in fact, as far back as the Gray Davis administration, served as a co-chair of the state agency Desal task force. And he was also heavily involved in the adoption of an amendment to the state's ocean plan that is now a key regulatory tool for reviewing proposed desalination facilities. And I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Tom.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Chair Bosco and Commissioner. And I have a presentation. As Ms. Detmer said, this proposed project involves some complex and difficult issues, several of which are unusual for the Commission to address. Fundamentally, though, this proposal is about ensuring that there is a new and needed water supply source for the Monterey Peninsula area. The area has had long-standing issues with adequate water supplies, in part because it's not connected to water sources from outside the area, such as the State Water Project. Additionally, since 1995, the applicant CalAm has been under a cease and desist order from the State Water Board to reduce its reliance on water from the Cornell River and to develop a new source of replacement water, which it must now do by December of 2021. There we go. The proposed project would include components both within and outside the coastal zone. This slide shows the extent of the project components, primarily pipelines, some of which are in the coastal zone, between Castroville to the north and areas near the Monterey Peninsula to the south. The project's desalination facility will be located inland of the coastal zone. It's shown by the black and white hash mark area in the lower left of this slide. The project would involve developing several wells to provide source water for the desal facility. The well field will be located near the shore of Monterey Bay at the CEMEX sand mining site within the coastal zone. Also within the coastal zone is a proposed installation of a pipeline shown here in blue that CalAm would use to transport water from the well field to the desal facility. The project would also include modifying an existing wastewater treatment facility outfall, shown here in gray, to discharge its effluent into Monterey Bay. Commission staff believes the project is inconsistent with the Coastal Act and City of Marina LCP policies related to environmental sensitive habitat areas, coastal hazards, protection of groundwater, and placing fill in coastal waters. I'll address some of these briefly. Regarding ESHA, the well field would be located in dune habitat that qualifies as environmentally sensitive habitat for ESHA. This area has been used as part of the sand mining operation, which through a settlement agreement with the Coastal Commission will cease operations in about a year. Development of the project could result in more than 30 acres of ESHA impacts. Since the Coastal Act and the City of Marina LCP require that only uses dependent on those habitat resources be allowed in ESHA, we concluded that CalAm's proposed project would not be consistent with these ESHA protection policies. Coastal hazards are also an issue at the proposed well field. An updated sea level rise and erosion assessment resulted in information that is partially summarized on this graph, which shows that most of the wells would not be directly subject to erosion under any of the more extreme events. However, the expected amount of erosion would result in the shoreline dunes moving inland to cover the wells with sand. You can see that to some extent in this chart that shows the beach profile of the well field, the black line at the top, and with one of the wells shown in green. As the shoreline moves inland, so would the dunes with those higher elevation areas just to the left of the well, at some point covering the well pits. This is also evident in this slide I showed earlier, where you can see the proposed well locations in relation to the dunes. This inland movement of the dunes in response to shoreline erosion could require in the future that CalAm conduct additional maintenance to keep the wells clear of sand, or that the wells be moved even further inland, which is not feasible since they would be located near the inland extent of CalAm's property interests at the site, and the CEMEX settlement agreement does not allow for acquisition of additional property interests. Another significant issue of concern for this project is its potential effects on groundwater. A concern is that the wells would not only extract seawater from beneath the shoreline, but would also extract amounts of fresh and brackish water that others might use for water supply. This issue is extremely complicated, involving a complex aquifer system underlying the proposed well field, an extensive groundwater basin on which several cities and inland agricultural interests rely on heavily for their water supplies, and competing studies about how much of an effect Calam's project would have on the area's groundwater. This slide gives some idea of the complexity of the underlying aquifers and substrates. To help determine the proposed project's likely impacts on groundwater resources, the project CEQA review included significant hydrogeologic monitoring and modeling efforts and a pump test conducted at a test well that the Commission approved several years ago. The EIR concluded that the project would have limited effects on the rate of seawater intrusion in the area and would extract a relatively small proportion of non-seawater from the underlying aquifers. This conclusion was challenged by other parties. To try to resolve some of these differences, Commission staff asked Calam to fund an independent review of some of the key competing groundwater documents and to answer some basic questions about potential groundwater effects, such as would the project increase the rate of seawater intrusion, and would it result in greater adverse impacts to freshwater than previously determined. That report, which is provided as Exhibit 7 to the staff report, concludes that there are data gaps in the modeling effort that should be filled with additional monitoring data, and that some of the assumptions used in the model are not adequately supported. The report concluded that the project's effects on groundwater supplies could be substantially greater than previously identified. We therefore believe the Commission does not have enough information before it to conclude that the project would be adequately protective of groundwater supplies. Notwithstanding these policy inconsistencies, both the Coastal Act and the city's LCP allow for approval of a project that qualifies as a coastal dependent industrial facility, and it meets 3 requirements of Coastal Act Section 30260. The 2 criteria most relevant here are, first, that alternative locations for the proposed project are infeasible or more environmentally damaging. Second, that denying the project would adversely affect the public welfare. We believe this proposed project qualifies as a coastal dependent industrial facility and therefore may be considered under the special override provision of the Coastal Act. We expect that you'll hear a lot of comments today about the issue of a feasible, less environmentally damaging alternative. Basically, one of the key questions before the Commission is whether to approve the proposed desalination project despite its acknowledged impact on coastal resources because there's no other feasible way to provide the Monterey Peninsula with the water it needs. Our staff recommendation is that an alternative does exist that would provide sufficient water and would have far fewer environmental impacts than Calam's project. The alternative that staff evaluated is known as the Pure Monterey Expansion Project. This project is an expansion of an already permitted water recycling and groundwater recharge project located nearby and inland of the coastal zone. That facility, which is a joint effort by several local water districts, will treat several sources of water, inject the treated water into an aquifer, and then extract it as needed to provide a drinking water supply. To understand this alternative, some background is needed. As Allison mentioned, when Calam applied to the PUC for permission to build its desalination facility, it originally proposed a larger facility. However, the PUC found that such a large facility was not needed because Calam could purchase 3,500 acre-feet of water per year from this pure water project. The PUC required Calam to do this, and the initial phase of that project is now about complete. There's no dispute that the pure water project will provide less expensive water than the desal facility, and that it will have fewer environmental effects. At the time of the PUC's decision on Calam's project, the water districts had started planning a possible expansion of this pure water project. The PUC found at the time that the expansion was not far along enough in the planning process to rely on it as a source of water for Calam. However, since the PUC's decision, the pure water expansion has become more fully developed. Although there are still some uncertainties related to its timing and other factors, current evidence supports the conclusion that it should be able to be completed within the same time frame as the desal facility. Also, updated water supply and demand figures that staff of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District developed after the PUC completed its review led us to conclude that the expansion would provide enough water for current and expected future uses. We thus determined that the currently planned expansion of this pure water project is now a feasible alternative to Calam's desal facility. A key issue in determining whether this expansion will provide sufficient water involves selecting between two different water demand projections, one developed during the PUC's review and one provided recently by the Water District. This slide, which is included on page 87 of the staff report, compares the scenarios developed by the PUC and the Water District in its 2019 update. It shows the existing demand in town service area and the expected future demands in different categories of water use. You'll see an overall difference of about 1,300 to 1,700 acre feet between the two totals. This slide, which is on page 90 of the staff report, helps explain the bases for these different demand projections. It shows the area's average annual water use over each of the past 20 years. You can see on the right side of the chart that the current actual use as of 2018 is about 10,000 acre feet per year. To help forecast future demand, though, you use the annual average over the past 10 years of water use. You can see that you're going to get very different results depending on which 10-year period you use. Basically, the PUC used a 10-year period that included more of those early high-use years on the left side of the chart, while the Water District was able to use more recent data from 2018 and 2019 that was not available at the time of the PUC decision, and which resulted in a couple of those early high-use years dropping off the 10-year measuring period. As you can see, each year we move forward leads to a new year of lower use that is more in line with these other recent years, which illustrates the benefits of the area's implementation of extensive conservation measures, state guidance that's reducing per capita water consumption, and other factors. Excuse me. There we go. This leads to a question, though, of the extent to which a water system should be sized to accommodate growth or allow for some amount of post-drought related rebound in water use. Staff looked into that question, and our conclusion that the pure water expansion would provide enough water is based in part on information summarized in this chart, which is on page 91 of the staff report. This chart prepared by the Water District shows several things. The current demand of about 10,000 acre feet, the total water supply that would be provided in Cal-Am's water portfolio if it included the pure water expansion, and that total water supply in that portfolio if it were to include Cal-Am's Desal project. Starting in 2020 and considering growth in three different ways, you see that the pure water project would provide enough water for at least the next 20 years. The three growth scenarios are: first, the yellow line, how much water would be needed if the highest annual growth rate during the past 20 years happened every future year. Next, the green line shows that same high growth rate with the addition of a single large 250 acre foot project early in the timeline. Third, the blue line shows a somewhat extreme example of expected demand with growth happening every year at 3 times the previously measured highest rate. Even with these relatively high growth projections, the pure water expansion provides sufficient water for at least a couple of decades. You can also see that the Cal-Am project would over-provide water under any of these scenarios for many decades. I should note that this chart starts at a lower demand level, the 10,000 acre feet, that represents this point in time rather than the existing demand based on the 10-year average, which is a little bit over 11,000 acre feet. However, as I mentioned earlier, the next several 10-year annual averages are going to be dropping substantially, so even with the starting point somewhere between 10 and 11,000 acre feet, the pure water expansion would reasonably provide enough water for decades. Additionally, water from this alternative project would come in at a much lower cost, about a third of the cost of desal water, and few, if any, impacts to coastal resources. This led staff to consider the pure water expansion to be a feasible and less environmentally damaging alternative to the proposed project. After we published the staff report, we got a number of comments, including from staff at the PUC and the State Water Board, concerned in part about the new water demand projections we relied upon and wanting additional information about our analysis. As Allison mentioned, this is one of the reasons why we believe we need to take additional time to meet with all the parties, including the applicant and these agencies, and come back to you again at a future hearing. Going back to the Coastal Act's override provision, the second requirement is to determine whether denying Cal-Am's project would adversely affect the public welfare. We concluded for several reasons that the public welfare would not be harmed by denial of the project. First, as I mentioned, we concluded it would be a feasible, less environmentally damaging alternative. Additionally, that alternative would have far fewer impacts on public resources. We also determined that Callion's proposal raised environmental justice concern. There are 3 low-income, underserved communities of concern within the project area: the city of Castroville, Seaside, and Marina. All of Callion's ratepayers within the Monterey Peninsula would see increased water rates from this project, but low-income ratepayers would be disproportionately impacted by the rate increase. As part of its environmental justice evaluation, the Commission staff environmental justice team met with residents of Marina and Seaside who are struggling to pay their current water bills and are concerned the higher water rates could force them out of their currently affordable communities. The alternative pure water project would result in water rates expected to about 3 times less than the proposed project, which would reduce the burden on these unserved communities. In sum, the proposed project's nonconformity to several Coastal Act and LCT provisions and the expected availability of a feasible and less environmentally damaging alternative led to staff's recommendation of denial. As I said, though, we expect to continue working with the various parties and come back to you with an updated recommendation and findings that more fully address concerns about groundwater effects, adequacy of water supplies, environmental justice, and other issues. With that, Madam Chair, I'll close the staff presentation, but I want to note that representatives from various agencies are here to answer questions, including from the PUC, the state and regional water boards, and several local water districts.